This dashing young man is our protagonist, Setsuna Cromwell. The one who decided to follow the path of a battle mage. Just a few seconds ago, he destroyed this enormous black iron rock in just 10 seconds. This rock was so hard that even an instructor would take 30 minutes to destroy it. Setsuna did all of this to catch the principal's eye. Only then could he learn dual-element magic from him. The reason he knew this was because Setsuna is a regressor who just returned after being overcome by the evil god. And all of this began a few hours ago, at some point in the future, when humanity stood on the brink of extinction. The instigator of this chain of events was the evil god Vindriake. No one knew where this being came from, but after suddenly appearing from the sky. He also brought countless monsters along with him. And under his command, these monsters began to ravage the entire continent. Faced with such an unexpectedly vast number of monsters, humanity gradually lost ground and was overwhelmed, leading to this final battle. However, humanity still had a glimmer of hope. That hope lay with these 5 skilled mages. Humanity's strongest mages rose up to oppose the evil god. And upon seeing the 5 of them, the monsters went into a frenzy, charging forward without regard for their lives. Even in the face of such a terrifying wave of monsters, Setsuna remained calm and commanded the others. "Everyone, prepare your magic." At his words, the other 4 immediately activated their magic. Then, at his command to fire, all 5 began to unleash their magic forward. The power from the magic of these 5 top mages was truly not to be underestimated. The monsters that had just charged forward were instantly obliterated. At that moment, Setsuna also saw something ahead and shouted, "Evil God Vindriake." And then, following Setsuna's gaze, as the dust settled, the figure of the evil god Vindriake appeared before him. And after seeing his form, Setsuna declared, "This is your end." Fusion magic combining all 6 magic elements and firing simultaneously, elemental burst. Setsuna spoke as he began to unleash his ultimate magic. Immediately after, a massive energy column shot out from this magic circle, flying straight towards Vindriake. His red-haired teammate behind him, seeing this, also shouted, "Support Setsuna." Following his words, all 4 began to use their magic and unleash attacks simultaneously. The final result was that the evil deity Vindriake took all 5 magic attacks directly. The red-haired young man, seeing this, began to rejoice and said, "How do you like that?" But he hadn't had long to celebrate when, in front of them, the figure of the evil deity Vindriake slowly reappeared. Without a single scratch. The blue-haired female teammate, seeing this, said in confusion, "Impossible." At the same time, the black-haired boy beside her reacted very quickly. He immediately conjured another fire spell and said, "No, it's not over yet, attack even harder." Following his words, the 4 teammates combined their efforts and used their magic to attack once more. Only Setsuna noticed something amiss and shouted, "Wait, we need to observe what's happening." But unfortunately for him, the 4 teammates had already unleashed their magic towards the evil deity Vindriake. Vindriake treated these magic attacks as if they were nothing but air, he didn't even bother to dodge. And as soon as these magic attacks touched him, nothing happened at all. It was as if they had vanished before they could strike his body. Setsuna, who hadn't attacked but had only strained his eyes to observe, had realized a few things. Their magic was being nullified? Setsuna gritted his teeth in thought. Turning to the evil deity Vindriake, after taking several magic attacks from the human team without any injuries, he uttered words of disdain, "Is this the limit of humanity? You insects are ravaging my garden, truly a bunch of fools." Turning to the ground below, Setsuna's team had begun to fall into chaos as they saw Vindriake completely unharmed after their recent attacks. "No, it can't be, magic has no effect on him," the purple-haired girl said worriedly. At this moment, the red-haired young man beside her also turned pale and said to Setsuna, "Give us orders, Setsuna." As for Setsuna, he wasn't faring much better. "This is insane, there has to be something we can do," Setsuna gritted his teeth in thought. But at that very moment, an attack suddenly flew in from nowhere and struck the red-haired young man directly, causing him to bleed profusely immediately. And he was blown far away, his fate unknown, while the others were already surrounded by monsters. The purple-haired girl, seeing this, probably intended to use her magic to heal the red-haired young man. But then her face turned pale, and she said, "Setsuna, I'm out of mana." And just like that, the human team had shattered. The black-haired male mage was cleaved in 2 by the blade of a bee monster. The blue-haired female mage was panicking from the attack of a lizard monster. Meanwhile, the black-haired female mage had been captured by an orc, which held a knife to her throat. "No, get away from me, save me, Setsuna." Their panicked cries echoed. But before our protagonist could even react to help, the blue-haired girl was swallowed whole by the lizard monster. The swift demise of his comrade right before his eyes caused Setsuna's face to harden. Immediately after, Setsuna flew into a rage and yelled, "Stop, you fiends!" As he spoke, he gathered all 5 elements into a single attack. But before he could unleash the spell, the demon god Vindriake appeared behind him with a powerful strike. And this strike sent Setsuna sprawling to the ground. A moment later, when Setsuna regained consciousness after this attack, his entire body was utterly battered. Setsuna, covered in blood, slowly lifted his head to look forward. And the sight before him truly made his face become dazed, like one on the verge of death. Everything was gone. Before his eyes was a scene of desolation and ruin, fires raging everywhere, along with the remains of his fallen comrades. Seeing this, Setsuna clenched his fists and said helplessly, "Is this the end of humanity?" And as he despaired, Vindriake's voice rang out from behind him, "Fighting is utterly meaningless." Upon hearing the one responsible for everything, rage boiled within Setsuna. "No, it's not over yet," Setsuna thought, muttering a spell. And as soon as the spell was completed, his right arm was enveloped in a pale white glow. Then, he launched his fist straight at him. For some unknown reason, Vindriake raised both hands to block this punch, despite previously standing still and never bothering to defend against any long-range magic attacks. And for a brief moment, his face became bewildered. And the result was as expected. Setsuna's recent punch had inflicted damage upon him. In Setsuna's eyes, a part of the demon god's gauntlet had cracked, and purple blood dripped down. This sight left Setsuna astonished. It actually worked? How could a low-level spell harm him? Setsuna thought, retreating to maintain distance. And with the mind of a genius, he quickly realized something. So that's it? I can defeat the demon god with it. How frustrating, I only just realized it now, Setsuna thought angrily. Meanwhile, across from him, the demon god seemed to have realized that Setsuna could inflict damage upon him, and he didn't want to prolong things and risk further complications. So, he gathered a surge of magical power in his palm and said, "This is your limit, you vermin." And at the moment he was about to finish Setsuna, the necklace on his person suddenly glowed. Seeing this, Setsuna stared at it, a little surprised. "This is what I received from the principal." At this moment, an image from the past flooded his mind. At the moment he received this necklace from the principal, is this the necklace of rebirth? Setsuna asked, wondering. Meanwhile, the principal explained, "Yes, it is the necklace that holds the power of the time spirit. You will have the power to correct your regrets once." But at that time, Setsuna wasn't very interested in the necklace. "Regrets? I've never had any. Don't you think it would be wasted on me?" Please subscribe to La La School channel so you don't miss out on exciting videos. And this answer of his truly made the principal burst out laughing. Haha, as expected from the top student of the Magic Academy. And after he had finished laughing, he slowly approached and placed his hand on Setsuna's shoulder, saying, "Just take it. I'm sure you'll need it in the future." Back in reality, the necklace in his hand now emitted a fierce glow. And Setsuna began to voice his wish. "Regret. My regret is that I didn't choose that magic back then. Just you wait, you. When I get that magic, I will defeat you." And as soon as Setsuna thought this, the necklace in his hand emitted a terrifying light, and Setsuna lost consciousness immediately after. And waiting until he woke up again, Setsuna found himself sitting in some hall. Setsuna, on his part, hadn't even had time to figure out what time period he was in. When suddenly a blonde boy behind him patted Setsuna on the shoulder and said, "Don't look so dazed, Setsuna, it's your turn." Hearing the familiar voice, Setsuna turned around and said in surprise, "Leo?" Then he stared at the blonde boy and thought. Leo was considered missing before the evil deity appeared. Thinking this, Setsuna also observed the surrounding scenery and deduced. Asterisk, is this the Magic Academy? So I've really gone back 10 years, asterisk. I won't fail again, this time I will defeat the evil deity, he told himself. And while he was still lost in thought, his friend Leo behind him had to remind him again, "I said it's your turn. We're at the blessing ceremony." "Ah, my mistake," Setsuna said awkwardly. And then he began to step up to the podium. His ascent also caused some students below to start whispering. "Isn't that the greatest genius in the Academy's history? I heard he's skilled in all types of magic." Turning towards the podium, a teacher opened the book in his hands. Immediately after, a strong gust of wind, powerful enough to touzle Setsuna's hair, emerged from the book, and Setsuna began to ponder. There are many different types of magic. And to use different magic, different techniques are required. That's why you must choose a primary type of magic to master. Learning magic different from your chosen primary type is extremely difficult. This is akin to believing in two deities simultaneously. As he thought this, countless symbols began to float around Setsuna. At this moment, the teacher at the front spoke up, "Setsuna Cromwell, please choose the type of magic you wish to use." After speaking, he pointed to a symbol shaped like a five-pointed star and said, "Well, you'll choose this one, of course, won't you?" Turning to Setsuna. After the teacher spoke, he considered. Ranged magic? Normally, it would indeed be the most sensible choice. Elements created from magical power and launched at adversaries, it's less perilous when attacking from a distance, and normally, that's enough to vanquish all foes. In the future, I became the world's strongest mage with ranged magic, but it was useless when battling against the malevolent deity. Thinking this, Setsuna immediately turned around and stared intently at a magic symbol shaped like a spear. And with just this action, both the teacher and the students below began to break out in a cold sweat on his behalf. Even his close friend Leo was puzzled and asked, "What are you planning, Setsuna? You said you'd choose ranged magic this morning. Now you're choosing close combat magic? That's the worst of the worst." Meanwhile, the teacher had to remind Setsuna, this path focuses on body reinforcement. You can only attack nearby opponents. This magical path has been almost entirely abandoned. It's like rushing onto a battlefield full of bows and guns with only a stone axe. "Are you throwing away your future?" he said worriedly. And despite the professor's worries, Setsuna understood this clearly. "I know that. A mage who chooses this path is almost without hope. But to contend with the malevolent deity Vindriake? This is the only choice to defeat him. To accomplish it, Thinking this, Setsuna had solidified his resolve. Then, his hand became enveloped in a layer of magical energy. And then, under the astonished gaze of the teacher and all the students, Setsuna reached out his hand and crushed the paper in front of him. Immediately after, the paper transformed into a stream of light that enveloped his arm, finally becoming a symbol on the back of his hand. "I'll choose this and overcome that wicked deity," Setsuna told himself. And after Setsuna's blessing process concluded, he observed the mark now clearly imprinted on the back of his hand. Then smiled with satisfaction. But naturally, his decision left the students below in disbelief. And the one who reacted most vehemently was the teacher from earlier. Immediately, he slammed the book in his hand shut. Then, trembling, he said, "I intended to impart everything I know to you. If you had chosen long-range magic, you could have become the strongest mage, and I could have gained glory, yet you didn't choose it," he yelled angrily. This man was the head of the long-range magic department, Cyrus Ackley. Turning toward Setsuna, he didn't pay much attention to the old man's angry words. "Glory, huh? All that will become meaningless in just 10 years. 10 years until humanity is annihilated. 5 years until the evil god appears. I've had the knowledge from the start, but almost no experience with close-quarters magic. The problem is how I can improve before the evil god appears," Setsuna said as he began to walk downstairs, leaving behind Cyrus's extremely furious face. Not long after, once all the students had chosen their primary magic, an announcement sounded to remind them, "Second-year students have completed the enrollment ritual. Please proceed to your specialized classes." Setsuna, hearing this, suddenly remembered. "Speaking of which, where's the close-quarters magic class?" Thinking this, he looked left and right, searching for his close friend Leo to ask for directions. But unfortunately, that fellow had vanished some time ago. Having no other choice, Setsuna approached a certain couple to ask for directions. "Hey, could anyone help me with directions?" But before Setsuna could finish his sentence, the couple looked at him as if he were a germ. Then they made excuses to each other. "Oh, it's getting late, isn't it? Yeah, let's hurry." After saying this, they quickly ran away from Setsuna. And it wasn't just these two, others did the same. When Setsuna turned to look at them, they deliberately huddled together, talking amongst themselves, as if to show they were extremely busy and didn't want to pay attention to Setsuna. At this point, some disparaging whispers even began to surface. "He's doomed. Trying to stand out by choosing a different specialization, he'll learn his lesson soon enough." And so, Setsuna clearly saw the true colors of these people. Just by choosing close-quarters combat, their treatment of him was completely different from before. Thinking this, Setsuna sighed and muttered, "I'll have to find it myself. There must be a campus map on the school grounds, right?" After saying that, Setsuna quickly headed out to the school grounds to look for the map. As he was walking, Setsuna suddenly heard a loud shout, "Fireball!" This shout caught Setsuna's attention. Is someone fighting? In a place like this? He thought to himself. And from Setsuna's perspective, at this moment, a red-haired girl was struggling to dodge fire attacks from someone. After retreating to dodge the attack, she immediately yelled at the guys in front, "Give it back. That's a precious gift from my mother," she said with a voice and expression full of fury. But faced with this anger, the bullying students seemed even more amused. Among them, the chubby one picked up a blue hair clip and said, "This hair clip is a magic tool that can store mana, right? This is too advanced for a commoner like you to possess. But don't worry, we'll make good use of it." Meanwhile, Setsuna had already deduced the identities of these individuals. The one fighting was from the melee department, while the other three were from the long-range magic department. Turning back to the battle, the blonde-haired guy provocatively said, "If you want it back, come and get it with your strength. Use that weak melee power of yours." As he spoke, he began to conjure a flame in his hand. Then hurled it straight at the red-haired girl in front. Faced with such a barrage of fireballs flying towards her, the girl could only struggle to dodge. At this moment, the red-haired girl's entire body was enveloped in a faint orange glow. That was the basic magic of close-quarters combat, movement technique, which could increase movement ability to close in on an opponent. But even if she could dodge a few attacks, the distance remained too great. Turning back to the red-haired girl, after dodging the attack, she also shouted, "My mother saved up for an entire year to buy me that hair clip. I'll never let it fall into your hands." After saying that, she began to use some magic, gathering magical energy in her palm. Immediately after, a magical blade appeared in her hand. Setsuna, seeing this, realized, this is close-quarters magic, a magical sword. But with just that, it would be difficult to win. And just as he thought, the blonde-haired guy, after seeing her use this type of magic, immediately scoffed. "Haha, it's useless. I wonder if that short little sword can even strike me?" After saying that, he launched countless fireballs towards the girl. The red-haired girl quickly used the sword in her hand to slash at a fireball in front of her. But even so, she was knocked backward by the explosion it unleashed. Seeing this, the blonde guy burst out laughing, "Haha, pathetic. No matter what you do, it can't reach a long-range mage. You'll never understand in this lifetime." After saying that, he unleashed a few more fireballs toward her. And just at the moment when the girl thought she was about to be finished, Setsuna, who was nearby, moved as fast as the wind, rushing past the bullies and heading straight for her. And then, in the nick of time, Setsuna managed to embrace the girl and evade the fireballs. His sudden intervention made the bullies grit their teeth. Setsuna, on his part, didn't pay much attention to their attitude. He turned to look at the red-haired girl and asked, "Do you know where the close combat magic department is? I need someone to guide me there." The red-haired girl was stunned to hear that, but just as she was about to answer, the bullies in front recognized Setsuna and asked, "Is this Setsuna Cromwell?" Then, they noticed the mark on Setsuna's hand and exclaimed in surprise, "Wait, look at his hand, he chose close combat magic." And as soon as he saw the symbol, the blonde guy's attitude did a complete 180-degree turn. "Really? That's great then. If he chose close combat, we can beat him up as much as we want." As he spoke, he started unleashing fireballs. Setsuna heard them say that and thought to himself, "Close combat magic is indeed weak, but it depends on how you use it. While observing, I found a way to improve it." Thinking this, he put the girl down, slowly advanced forward, and said, "Close combat magic is indeed weak. But the quality of the discipline doesn't determine the outcome of a battle." The red-haired girl behind him saw Setsuna seemed ready to fight and said worriedly, "Hey, stop, they are seniors, you'll be." But before she could finish speaking, the blonde guy in front shouted, "Too late." After saying that, he unleashed countless fireballs toward Setsuna. And facing this fire magic, Setsuna began to use his own magic. Focusing magic into his legs, he activated an acceleration effect. And under the effect of this magic, Setsuna was able to easily evade all the attacks. "Alright. At this speed, I can dodge the magic. If I can move freely, I want to try again." Setsuna thought to himself, then began to weave and dart between the attacks. At the same time, he didn't forget to taunt the other guy, "You've only been shooting fireballs this whole time. Can't you use any other elements?" "Shut up," the blonde shouted. And despite his brave words, he was starting to feel extremely anxious. "What are these attacks? I can't hit him." The guy thought as he watched Setsuna dance between his attacks. Seeing this, he couldn't hold back his anger and declared, "I'm not playing around anymore." As he spoke, he began to gather a large fireball with both hands into his palms. Then he unleashed it forward as soon as the firepower was fully charged. Setsuna, on his side, also seemed to have no intention of playing around with him anymore. So he conjured a magic sword in his palm. Then, just as the fireball was about to reach him, he swung his sword and cleaved it in two. The cleaved fireball instantly dissipated. And this incredible feat truly made the blonde gape in astonishment. He cleaved it. Even the girl from the melee department couldn't believe it and asked again, "It can be cleaved?" Setsuna, hearing this, calmly explained, because it's magic against magic. Whoever is more skilled in magic will simply win. At this point, he also thought, the reason I, a person without much magic, became the strongest in the world is because I control magic with extreme precision. Next, he looked at the sword in his hand and was satisfied. It seems more useful than I thought. And if I can combine strength and speed, it would be even better. Turning back to the blonde, after Setsuna nullified his last fireball spell, he became furious and declared, damn it, if that's how it is, I'll use something bigger. It was unclear what kind of magic he intended to use next, but his two companions nearby, hearing this, immediately advised, wait, that's too dangerous. If you go too far, the teachers will come. But unfortunately for the two of them, the blonde had already gone berserk. Shut your mouth, he roared, then began to chant a spell. But before he could even finish chanting, his eyes widened. Because at that moment, Setsuna had lunged towards him as fast as a rocket. No way, if he approaches faster than my chanting speed, I'm done for. And as he thought this, Setsuna was already right in front of him. And immediately after, Setsuna gathered magical power in his palm. Then he activated his skill, Magic Fist. And he gave this bully a powerful punch straight to the stomach, making his face crumple up. The result wasn't very surprising. For a mage who rarely uses physical strength, taking a direct punch like that left him with wide eyes and an open mouth. The onlookers were also speechless with astonishment, witnessing the scene before them. Turning to Setsuna, after taking down this phony mage. He looked at his fist and thought confidently, just as expected. As long as they're within range, I can still fight normally, even with close-quarters magic. In contrast to his joyful demeanor, the blonde guy's companions were terrified, their faces pale. What was that? Close-quarters magic is supposed to be the weakest type of magic, isn't it? He only used that, and he's already that strong. At that moment, Setsuna, from the opposite side, said to him, did you forget something? The chubby guy heard this and hastily returned the hairpin, thinking to himself, from now on, I have to obey this guy. After thinking that, he and another guy hurriedly helped the blonde guy leave immediately. Next, Setsuna turned to the red-haired girl and said, here. It's important to you, isn't it? As he spoke, he returned the hairpin to the girl. The red-haired girl smiled and said, thank you. Then, she put the hairpin into her pocket and said, I haven't introduced myself yet, have I? My name is Layla Rose Win. She said, extending her hand towards Setsuna. Our protagonist, seeing this, also introduced himself, I am Setsuna Cromwell. He said, shaking her hand. However, her overly enthusiastic demeanor made Setsuna feel a bit awkward. I know. You're very famous for your compatibility with all magic paths. Why would someone like you choose close-quarters magic? Setsuna heard this and thought to himself, only then can I defeat the evil god, but no one would believe me if I said that. After thinking that, he didn't bother to answer and instead asked, by the way, could you show me the way to the close-quarters magic department building? Layla, startled by his words, exclaimed, oh no, the department orientation has already started, hasn't it? We need to hurry, Setsuna. After saying that, she pulled Setsuna along. Next, both of them hurriedly moved towards the close-quarters magic department building. At this point, Setsuna realized why he couldn't find the building earlier. So the department building is located on the outskirts of the academy. Close-quarters magic really isn't very popular. He thought to himself. Meanwhile, as they ran, Layla turned to him and said, hey, you have to teach me how to create mana swords like you did earlier. Setsuna, hearing this, calmly replied, it's nothing special, it just depends on how you control your mana. As he said this, he also thought to himself, that's right, close-quarters magic can be infinitely versatile depending on the situation. If I can master close-quarters magic, I'll be able to resist the banishment of the evil deity. And to gain another advantage when fighting the evil deity. Thinking this, Setsuna began to recall some memories from his previous life, when the headmaster called him to his office privately. There, he began to take off his gloves to show Setsuna. Setsuna, upon seeing his hands, was truly startled. Because, in his eyes, there were two different markings etched on the back of the headmaster's hands. Impossible, two primary magic types? Setsuna exclaimed in surprise. Usually, a person can only choose one primary magic type. Summoning magic was on his right hand, but the mark on his left hand, I've never seen before. Thinking this, Setsuna couldn't help but ask, Headmaster, what is that mark? The headmaster, hearing him, calmly replied, I will tell you when the time is right. Because it's you, I will trust you with the secret of this second magic. But it was a pity for Setsuna. Because in the end, he never taught him that magic. because after the evil deity appeared, the headmaster was assassinated. He had also sensed the danger with his second magic. This time, I will definitely learn it and change my destiny. As Setsuna was thinking this, the faculty building appeared before them. Over there. Layla happily pointed forward. Turning to Setsuna, he was still deep in thought. The problem is, how can I gain the headmaster's recognition now? While he was still thinking of ways to get into the headmaster's good graces, a bald man was already standing at the faculty building. And as soon as this man saw them, he began to frown and say, "Late, and you brought a girl with you." Setsuna Cromwell, looking at his face and hearing his voice, could tell he didn't like Setsuna at all. Layla, hearing this, quickly explained, "But it's because," but before she could finish her sentence, the bald man interrupted. "No excuses. No matter how good your achievements are, they are worthless here. Now that you're in the close quarters magic department, you're just trash," he said, pointing a finger at Setsuna's chest. In response to this provocation, he immediately grabbed the man's hand and said, "You're being very rude. You're a professor in this department, aren't you? Don't you have any pride in the subject you teach?" Then, for some reason, upon hearing Setsuna's words, the bald man began to growl angrily, saying, "You said proud? Hey, you brat, how dare you act like that towards your professor," he said, grabbing Setsuna's collar. "There are still many undiscovered possibilities in close-quarters magic." "I believe so," Setsuna said calmly. And this attitude of his only made the bald man even more furious. "You wretched brat. It seems I'll have to break that arrogance of yours myself." Thinking this, he turned away and said, "If you have so much energy to talk, why don't you come over here and show it?" As he spoke, he led Setsuna and Layla to a training ground where countless students were continuously punching and kicking the rocks in front of them. But these rocks were incredibly hard, just like this blue-haired young man here, who, even using all his strength to create a mana sword and slashed at the rock in front of him, it barely caused any damage to the rock, he was even knocked back. "Damn it, I can't even make a crack," he grumbled irritably. Meanwhile, the bald man began to explain to Setsuna and Layla. "This is a test to determine your class ranking. There's a crystal embedded in this black iron ore. You need to retrieve it as quickly as possible. Anyone who fails will be punished," he said to Setsuna with a look as if he was hoping for his failure. Then, the scoundrel turned to look at another group of students and snapped, "It's been an hour, and no one has broken it yet." The blue-haired student from earlier, hearing this, began to pant heavily and said, "You say that, sir, but this rock is incredibly tough." Even a female student next to him agreed, saying, "With the magic we've just learned, how are we supposed to break it now?" "He's probably just being difficult because he wasn't recommended himself," the gray-haired student whispered. Another student nearby, hearing this, quickly warned, "Keep your voice down. He'll hear you." Turning back to the bald man, after completing a round, he found a massive rock to challenge Setsuna and said, "Well, there's an empty rock here. All right, show me the capabilities of close-quarters magic. You only have 10 minutes. As he spoke, he patted the rock and looked at Setsuna with a very smug expression. And this made Layla, who was beside him, exclaim in surprise, "Wait, 10 minutes? How can anyone destroy black iron ore in just 10 minutes? Isn't this one much bigger than the others?" The bald man, hearing this, smirked and said, "So what? By the way, while you're complaining, you only have 9 minutes left." Turning to Setsuna, he gently touched Layla's shoulder to reassure her. Then he also stepped forward and tried to touch this enormous black iron rock. And after a moment of sensing, Setsuna said nothing. And that only made the bald man more smug as he said, "Heh, speechless now, aren't you? Well, if you're willing to humble yourself and apologize, I'll give you more time." Faced with his smugness, Setsuna coldly replied, "No, 10 seconds is more than enough." "More than enough, what?" the bald man grumbled. Hearing him say that, Layla, who was behind him, worriedly cautioned, "You're being too reckless, Setsuna." Turning back to the bald man, he was secretly delighted in his heart. "You fool, this black iron rock isn't just big, it's dense too. Even I would need at least 30 minutes to destroy it." Thinking this, he began to arrogantly declare, "There won't be a second chance, you know. If you said 10 seconds, then do it in 10 seconds. "All right, I'll show you," Setsuna said, as he began to concentrate mana into his right palm. At the same time, he also had his own thoughts. To gain the principal's recognition, he had to at least demonstrate something like this in the department. He couldn't let something so trivial stand in his way. With this thought, he created a mana sword in his hand. Then he thrust the sword directly towards the black iron rock in front of him. And the moment his sword made contact with the black iron rock, nothing happened. Not even a scratch. The hairless man on this side saw this and burst out laughing. Ha, in the end, you're just all talk. Do you even know what kind of penalty you'll face for daring to disobey your professor, which is me? But before this man could finish his sentence, several cracking sounds echoed from the front. Then, right where the sword tip had touched, cracks began to spread outwards. Immediately after, the entire enormous rock suddenly shattered into countless pieces. The bald man on this side stared blankly, not understanding what was happening. At this moment, Setsuna quickly grabbed the mana crystal from inside the rock, then held it out in front of the man and said, "See? Exactly 10 seconds, just as you underestimated." Layla, seeing this, also exclaimed in astonishment, "He actually did it." Even the other students couldn't believe their eyes. That giant rock. Maybe he's even stronger than the professor. And these whispers and murmurs reached the bald man's ears, driving him into a frenzy. "No way, I won't accept this, there must be cheating involved. That rock was so hard that it couldn't be broken even after 10 minutes. How could it be shattered in 10 seconds? He clearly cheated." Setsuna, hearing him ranting wildly, calmly said, "A rock like that takes 10 minutes? You should quit being a professor and go back to being a student. You wretched brat." The bald man yelled furiously. But just then, a voice rang out from behind him, "Hey, Rikari. Are you bullying students again?" The voice belonged to some burly teacher. And as soon as his voice rang out, the bald Rikari broke out in a cold sweat from fear. Next, he turned around and stammered, Professor Lionel, the homeroom teacher." Lionel, hearing this, began to yawn widely and said, "TSK, interrupting my nap again. Just so you know, that kid didn't cheat. He saw the flow of mana within the rock and aimed for its weakest point. That's why he was able to destroy the rock so easily." At this, the man puffed on a cigarette and glanced at Rikari with a dangerous look, saying, "You call yourself a professor and you couldn't even see that?" The bald Rikari broke out in a cold sweat from worry. And just as he feared, immediately after, Lionel raised his voice and said, "Hey, everyone, gather round. I hear Professor Rikari is going to demonstrate magic defense for us now." Rikari flinched nervously upon hearing this. But before he could even react, Lionel got into an attacking stance and said, "If you train regularly, you won't perish from this blow." Rikari hastily enveloped his body in a surge of magic for defense, while frantically saying, Wait, it's my fault, I'll never do it again." But unfortunately for him, the burly man had already unleashed a punch towards him. The bald man, seeing this, quickly raised his hands to defend. And as a result, he was sent flying like a cannonball towards the building behind him. Setsuna, witnessing this display of combat from the side, had to seriously ponder. A single punch shattered a magic defense, this level of power, who is that person? He's anything but ordinary. Turning to Lionel, after having sent the bald man flying, he then looked at Setsuna and said cheerfully, "You said your name was Setsuna or something? You're not bad at all. You're in the low-tier melee department, but your abilities are quite decent, aren't they? Well, just give it your all." With that said, Lionel turned and left. But at the same time, Setsuna confidently spoke up. "Professor, just because I'm a close combat fighter doesn't mean I'll lose to other departments. I will utilize the power of close combat and become the head of the department." Lionel heard that and slightly smiled. Then pointed at him and said, "You're quite spirited. If you want to learn magic, just say so, I'll teach you." With that, he turned and left. At the same time, he thought, I didn't expect there to be such a foolish kid who shares my thoughts. I thought they had chosen him as the representative for the exchange competition, but it seems an unexpected factor has appeared. Next, Lionel gathered all the new students and announced, "Let me introduce myself again. My name is Lionel, the head teacher of this department. Welcome, students, to the melee department. I don't like having to tell you this news right after we've just met, but we are about to decide on the representative for the exchange competition. The exchange competition is a major event where 8 magic departments will compete against each other to win honor and prestige. Each department will choose a representative, and the winner will be decided through a competition format. Before my regression, I won the exchange competition as the representative of the ranged combat department and received recognition from the principal. I cannot miss out on the representative position," Setsuna thought to himself. Just as he thought this, he also saw some fragments of black meteorite at his feet and mumbled, "Black meteorite fragments?" Lionel, from his position, seemed to have noticed Setsuna's gaze, so he began to say, "Hey, Setsuna, you're not the only one who passed the test. Before you students arrived, someone had already retrieved the crystal. Furthermore, he only used his fists." Setsuna heard that, understood everything, and thought, "So, these fragments at our feet were blasted all the way here from over there? While thinking, Setsuna looked to the side, where a large student was sitting alone. Then, Lionel's voice rang out again, "Hey, Drago, you too, come closer." This large student named Drago heard that, then began to move towards everyone, looked at Setsuna, and said, "So you're Setsuna Cromwell? Ah, you have a talent for learning other powerful long-range magic paths, so why did you choose close combat?" "Because there's something I need to accomplish with close combat magic," Setsuna calmly replied. And at his answer, Drago flew into a rage. "Shut your mouth. What about that weak body of yours then? For generations, my family has excelled in close-quarters magic. Even I have spent 17 years training this body for that very purpose." As he spoke, he began to stomp his foot firmly on the ground and assume a combat stance. Immediately after, the big guy threw a punch straight past Setsuna's face. This was an incredibly powerful punch. The wind pressure it generated alone caused the students behind to sway and lose their balance. Drago, on his side, began to glare at Setsuna and declared, "Fight me. I won't let the representative position fall into the hands of a fake who treats close-quarters combat as a joke." Turning to Setsuna, he now began to recall memories of this Drago. "Drago, I remember hearing his name during the battle for the representative position before I regressed. The only renowned individual from the mediocre close-quarters combat department." Thinking this, Setsuna replied with a smile, "Fine, let's fight." Lionel, standing nearby, saw that his two students had settled on a match, so he happily approached and said, "So, you two have made your agreement? Excellent. The match will take place in 1 week." Drago heard this, turned, and said, "Don't even think about running away this coming week, understand? If you're a close-quarters mage, you must fight with your very life." This sudden decision for a match caused the other students to start murmuring. "Hey, who do you guys think will win?" a student asked aloud. The girl next to him, hearing this, didn't think much of Setsuna and immediately said, "No matter how talented he is, he can't defeat Drago, can he?" Even Layla, who had witnessed Setsuna's true power, now felt worried and asked, "You can win, right?" And to her worry, Setsuna calmly gave a blunt answer, "Of course not. In my current state, there's no way I can contend with Drago's physique, which has been trained for so many years," Setsuna thought to himself. "I told her, but I have a secret plan." After saying that, he immediately left the training grounds. Layla, behind him, quickly chased after him and asked, "Hey, where are you going?" Just like that, the two left the building of the close-quarters magic department and ventured deep into the forest. And soon after, Layla's eyes widened at the sight before her. "Where is this place?" Layla said in astonishment, seeing a colossal ancient tree before her. Setsuna heard this and calmly said, "It's a secret training spot that only I know about. And here, I will become 3 times stronger." As he spoke, he touched the ancient tree with his hand. Immediately after, something extraordinary happened. A stream of blue magical energy began to rise from his feet and enveloped his entire body. Layla, hearing this, exclaimed in awe, "It's truly enormous. This must be a divine tree over 1,000 years old." Turning to Setsuna, now covered in a layer of blue magical energy, he thought to himself, "It seems I've been recognized again this time." Seeing this, Layla asked, "What's that light?" "It's the blessing of the divine tree. Only those recognized by the divine tree are granted it. Thanks to the holy mana attribute, I can recover my mana. As long as I'm here, I don't have to worry about running out of mana. Basically, I can train until I reach my limits," Setsuna said. Hearing him, Layla felt a bit of admiration and thought to herself, "Wow, but Drago is a born close combat mage. He helped me get my hairpin back, so now it's my turn to help him. Alright, let's go scout." Layla thought, then started walking towards the close combat department's training room. Simply put, it was a room full of bodybuilding equipment. And while everyone was exhausted just from lifting a few barbells, Drago trained like a maniac. The super heavy barbell in his hand seemed weightless. This left the crowd bewildered. What the heck? Is he the only weird one here? It seemed Drago had finished his warm-up. So he turned to Lionel next to him and said, "Professor, are the black iron stones still on the field?" Hearing this, Lionel exhaled a puff of smoke and said, "Hey, are you planning to destroy all the stones?" "No, I'm just borrowing a bit," Drago said, walking out of the training room. And what he meant by borrowing was that this muscular guy started tying these stones tightly to his back, then began doing push-ups. Meanwhile, Layla stealthily followed behind. After seeing the scene, she was so scared her face turned purple. "No way, is this a joke? If he punched someone, couldn't it be fatal? Setsuna, will he really be okay?" Layla worriedly thought, as she rushed to find Setsuna to relay this information. Turning to Setsuna, at this moment, he was still leisurely reading some martial arts book. And Layla, after running over and seeing this scene, couldn't help but exclaim, "Hey, is this really the time to be so relaxed? Do you know Drago does push-ups while carrying 5 blocks of dark iron?" Setsuna wasn't very surprised to hear that. "Oh, really?" As expected. But he'd definitely do that for strength training, wouldn't he? Next, knowing Layla was worried about him, he said, "Don't worry, I've accounted for everything." After saying that, he activated some kind of magic, allowing him to read the book at supernatural speed. With just one glance at each page, he could grasp its content. Turning to Layla, she was still a bit confused about Setsuna's intentions, so she asked, "What do you mean?" Setsuna began to explain, "Physical enhancement basically uses mana to strengthen and control the nervous system. If you want to train your legs, just focus on your legs. If you want to train your arms, focus on your arms. In case you need to enhance your memory, you just need to focus your attention on your head. And once you've visualized the technique in your mind, you just need to perform it." At this point, Setsuna stood up to demonstrate what he had learned from the book. First was a high kick. Next, he created a mana sword and performed some practice slashes. Layla, after witnessing this scene, was stunned and said, "That's amazing, and you learn techniques so quickly too." Setsuna, hearing her praise, calmly replied, "No, it's not enough yet." But just as Setsuna finished speaking, a sudden wave of pain struck him, causing him to collapse to the ground. Layla, seeing this, quickly rushed to his side. Then, she noticed Setsuna's right arm, which was already badly bruised, and said worriedly, "Setsuna, your injury." Setsuna, despite the pain, struggled to support himself and said, "I'm fine, I'm just using physical enhancement to temper my muscles. Now, let's focus on healing first. Repeating this process will allow me to strengthen my body in a short amount of time." As Setsuna spoke, he began to use magic power to heal himself. And his injury recovered in an instant. But even so, Layla was still a bit worried and said, "You don't have to push yourself too hard, there must be another way." "No, there isn't. I can't keep up with Drago if I train with half-hearted methods. After all, he's been practicing close-quarters combat magic for years. With the time I have left, I need to train using this destruction and regeneration method another 1,000 times. 1,000 times? Just once is already so painful." Layla exclaimed in astonishment. Setsuna, on his side, after hearing her words, just smiled thoughtfully. "Not exactly. Every time I train hard, I remember that time when I was still in the orphanage. Back then, I didn't even know how to use magic, so I practiced every day. And of course, I failed countless times, but even so, I kept practicing. Even if it didn't seem to make much difference, I gradually improved." Thinking this, Setsuna smiled and said to Layla, "As long as I keep getting stronger, this is nothing. Subscribe to La La School channel so you don't miss out on exciting videos." And so, Setsuna and Layla began training together, starting with stretching exercises, leading up to exercises to improve their physical fitness, or strengthening their mana swords. And through these rigorous training sessions, Layla gained a new perspective on Setsuna. Someone once said that Setsuna only had natural talent. But in reality, he was more diligent than ever. Layla thought this as she watched Setsuna, who was doing push-ups with 5 boulders on his back. And this remarkable progress made Layla happy for him. Next, time quickly passed, and the day of Setsuna and Drago's match arrived. At this moment, both of them were on a combat arena with Teacher Lionel as the referee. "You didn't run away?" Drago said, looking directly at Setsuna. Setsuna, hearing this, confidently replied, "I'm not running away. After all, I represent the close combat department." And after their verbal sparring, Uncle Lionel announced, "Are you two ready? Begin." Immediately after his command, Setsuna charged forward. Then, as soon as he closed in on Drago, he unleashed a tiger pounce. But Drago quickly brought his hands up to defend. And he sustained almost no damage. Seeing this, Setsuna spun his leg and delivered a kick directly at the large young man, pushing him back several meters, but it seemed to cause little damage. Setsuna, on his side, also began to ponder. He only used a magic shield to block the attack. Meanwhile, on the opposite side, Drago's face also began to show a serious expression. And then, Setsuna's face immediately showed surprise. Because in just a moment, this large man had closed in on him. At the same time, Drago also began to gather magical power into his fist. Then he launched a powerful punch directly at him. This attack was so strong that the wind pressure it generated alone caused the students to quickly cover their faces to avoid its impact. Layla, seeing this, also cried out worriedly, "Setsuna! Back on the arena, once the dust settled, everyone saw Setsuna still safe after the recent attack. It seemed he had used his hand to deflect Drago's arm to evade the blow. The rapid, clashing attacks between the two of them also made the other students exclaim in astonishment, "These two are truly incredible in combat. Is it true they just advanced a rank?" Turning to Setsuna, after blocking Drago's first attack, he realized something and said, "I see, if I take a direct hit, everything will be over." And after that, the struggle continued, starting with Drago throwing a straight punch that Setsuna ducked under and dodged. Then immediately after, Drago launched a sweeping hook, but our protagonist dodged it a second time. Seeing this, Drago became more furious and increased his attack speed. This time, Setsuna couldn't dodge in time, so he had to raise both hands and focus magical power into his arms to defend against this punch. Next, he threw another punch. Setsuna, meanwhile, continued to focus his magical power on defense. Setsuna's constant focus on defense without retaliating made Drago unable to hold back, and he yelled, "What's wrong? Why do you keep defending?" Setsuna, hearing him say that, remained silent. He continued to focus on his defense. "Ultimately, your body is still weak. It seems you've reached your limit," Drago said coldly. Meanwhile, in the stands above, Layla, seeing Setsuna being overwhelmed by Drago, worriedly thought, even after all that intense training, he still can't contend with Drago? Turning back to the arena, Lionel, who had been observing his two students compete, now noticed a few things. At first glance, it seemed Setsuna was being overwhelmed. But that kid is using magic to perfectly evade attacks. Suddenly, following his gaze, Drago began to spin and unleashed a spinning kick towards Setsuna. But Setsuna quickly used both hands to block it. Seeing this, Drago clicked his tongue slightly. Then he began to unleash a flurry of punches towards Setsuna. And while fighting, he didn't forget to speak, "You nobles always look down on close combat. My father and I were born into a family skilled in close combat. Do you know how much humiliation we've endured?" At this point, he also began to gather magic in his palm. Then formed a mana sword, continuing, "I will definitely change my own destiny." Meanwhile, across from him, Setsuna had also created his own mana sword. It seemed their battle was just officially beginning. And after seeing each other draw their swords, both rushed towards each other simultaneously without a word. And it seemed that even with swords, Drago was still a step ahead, continuously pushing Setsuna back. Our protagonist primarily used his agile footwork to dodge attacks and counterattack when he saw an opportunity to deliver a decisive blow. Just like now, Setsuna swung his sword at Drago. But Drago jumped high to evade. Immediately after, this large student used the force of his descent to deliver a powerful downward strike. Fortunately, Setsuna dodged in time. Otherwise, with such a strong attack, even he would have found it difficult to withstand. But Drago wasn't going to give up so easily. As soon as he saw Setsuna retreat, he charged forward immediately. And while Setsuna hadn't yet regained his balance, he powerfully swung his sword towards him. Setsuna, on his part, had to quickly raise his sword to block the strike. Then Setsuna spoke up. "I understand your words. Aren't we both aiming for something higher?" After speaking, Setsuna channeled power into his right arm and pushed Drago back. Next, Setsuna also proactively charged forward to attack first. And with just one strike from Setsuna, Drago's mana sword shattered into many pieces. At this moment, Drago also reflected on Setsuna's recent words. "Aiming higher? Higher?" Drago smiled at the thought. Next, he gathered energy into his left arm and thrust it straight towards Setsuna. Our protagonist, on his side, reacted very quickly. He immediately dodged to the side and avoided the punch. Following that, he swiftly circled behind Drago. Seizing this opportunity, Setsuna immediately used physical enhancement magic and a speed boost to increase his speed, unleashing countless slashes with his mana sword, forcing Drago to raise both hands in defense. From the stands, Layla, seeing this scene, exclaimed excitedly, "It's working." Turning to Professor Lionel, after seeing his two students perform so excellently, he happily thought, although Drago's counter-defense abilities are outstanding, Setsuna's mana control and physical enhancement abilities are also quite formidable. I wonder who among them will win. And while the professor was happily pondering, Setsuna, on his side, began to find it tough. His defense is too solid. I need to create an opening for attack. As he thought this, Drago suddenly retreated backward to maintain distance. Then, immediately after, he once again conjured a mana sword in his hand. With the sword in hand, he didn't hesitate to swing it straight towards Setsuna. Fortunately for Setsuna, he leaned back in time to evade it. However, this allowed Drago to seize the opportunity and begin a more relentless assault. Immediately, he let out a loud roar and swung his sword at Setsuna again. And next was a scene of both characters fighting and retreating. It seemed Drago wanted to end the battle quickly. So he began channeling his mana into the sword. Setsuna realized this immediately. He's using all his mana for this attack. And just as Setsuna had predicted, Drago then unleashed a sword strike so powerful it shattered the floor into many pieces. Fortunately, Setsuna managed to dodge it. But even so, he was still pushed back to the edge of the arena by its force. Finally, I've got him cornered. This time, he won't be able to utilize his footwork anymore, Drago thought to himself. Then, this fellow began to use some strange technique. His entire body seemed to have grown noticeably larger. Veins began to bulge across the arms of this large individual. At a glance, it felt as if Drago had truly gone berserk. And then, immediately after, he channeled power into his fist and charged straight towards Setsuna. And faced the mighty fist of this hulking figure. Setsuna focused his mind on observing. And just as Drago's fist struck him, Setsuna's body vanished like an illusion. Huh? An illusion? Drago thought to himself as he saw Setsuna's form disappear upon contact with his fist. And at this moment, Setsuna's voice echoed from above his head. If I continuously use mana on the spot, I can create illusions of myself. Drago was startled by the voice, but before he could react, Setsuna landed behind him and took a sword-swinging stance. Drago, on his end, clicked his tongue in annoyance and threw a punch towards Setsuna. It's over. Setsuna murmured. Immediately after, he unleashed a slash straight at the large man's waist before the man's fist could connect with him. And after taking a direct hit to the waist like that, Drago's eyes went blank. The other students in the stands gasped at the rapid progression of the battle. Meanwhile, Professor Lionel admired the thought. This kid wants to use strength to counterattack, both did very well. But this time, Setsuna did better. Thinking this, he raised his hand to declare the match over. The winner is Setsuna Cromwell. And immediately after his announcement, Layla jumped up in celebration, while her other friends were surprised by the match's outcome. Meanwhile, below, his friend Drago's large body trembled, and he regained consciousness. The guys in the stands could hardly believe the sight. He took that hit and can still stand up? He's really tough. Turning to Drago, his body was now trembling with pain, and he thought, no way, he held back on that last mana sword strike. At this moment, Setsuna also extended his hand to help the big man up. But seeing this, Drago didn't rush to take Setsuna's hand. Instead, he calmly asked, tell me, what do you fight for? Hearing this, Setsuna looked at Drago for a moment and then said, so I won't lose anyone else, so nothing will be taken from me. I will become stronger than everyone. And Setsuna's words genuinely surprised the burly Drago a little. But then he understood something and said, I get it. You're truly strong. I concede completely. After saying that, he took Setsuna's hand and struggled to stand up. Seeing this, Setsuna smiled and praised him, you certainly live up to your name. And naturally, after witnessing Drago's true strength, Setsuna had many thoughts. With that power, he will be very helpful in the future battle against the evil gods. At this moment, Teacher Lionel, who was nearby, walked closer to them and said, having to fight Drago in close quarters combat like that. You almost lost, didn't you? Next, he raised Setsuna's arm and announced to all the observing students, Setsuna has been chosen as the representative for the melee department. Time quickly passed. A few days later, Lionel led Setsuna to the door of a certain room and said, it's time for the representatives to gather for the exhibition match. It might sound odd, but mind your manners, okay? Understood, Setsuna quickly replied. Then he opened the door and went inside. Through Setsuna's eyes, the room was already full of people. It seemed all the other department representatives had arrived earlier, and he was the latest. At that moment, among the representatives, there was a very arrogant guy wearing glasses. As soon as he saw Setsuna arrive, he spoke with a smug look, oh, so the representative from the melee department has finally arrived. Showing up just to disgrace yourself, how impressive. Meanwhile, Setsuna, after seeing the symbol on the back of the guy's hand, figured out which department he represented. This symbol, he must be the representative of the incantation magic department. Turning back to the guy with glasses, he continued to provoke Setsuna, don't you know anything, you representative of a lowly department? I'm your opponent in the first match. The guy said, approaching Setsuna, then stepped directly on his foot. Then, he pointed at Setsuna's chest and spoke with a very provocative expression. Hasn't anyone from the melee department won in hundreds of years? Useless people like you should just hide in a corner and train your muscles until you drop. As for me... But before the guy could finish his sentence, his face suddenly contorted, and he screamed in agony. The main reason was that Setsuna had just given him a stomp, as if to crush his foot. At the same time, Setsuna said coldly, "It seems your department has a very peculiar way of greeting, huh? Is this how it's done?" As Setsuna spoke, he began to press his foot down harder. And this made the guy with glasses shriek even more miserably. Finally, he could no longer maintain his provocative expression from earlier and began to say angrily, "You jerk." But Setsuna didn't wait for him to finish his tirade. He interrupted, "Whether we've won or not for hundreds of years is irrelevant, because this year, our close combat department will definitely be champions." As he said this, Setsuna lifted his leg, causing the glasses-wearing guy to lose his balance and stumble backward. And as soon as Setsuna released him, the guy immediately started ranting again. "Stop spouting nonsense," he yelled. But at that very moment, a few footsteps echoed from the doorway. Then, the principal's voice rang out, "Passion is good, but shouldn't we let the match decide the victor?" The department representatives, who had been observing Setsuna and the glasses-wearing guy exchanging heated words, immediately stood up to greet the principal upon seeing him enter. Setsuna, on his part, stared at the principal and thought, "What's happening now is just like before my regression." "You've arrived, principal." While Setsuna was still deep in thought, a pink-haired girl with a pretty, smiling face spoke up, "It's an honor to meet you, sir. I will certainly do my best to prove my abilities." Hearing her voice, Setsuna turned to look at the girl and thought, "That's Karen from the summoning department. She's as friendly as ever. A formidable opponent in my fierce exhibition match before regression. I was the victor back then, but this time I still need to be careful." Turning to the principal, he smiled and said to his students, "First, congratulations on earning the position of department representative. I'm delighted to see 8 talents gathered here. I believe you've all heard the news. The school-wide exhibition match will be held in a 1-on-1 format. Your opponents will be chosen randomly. The first match, close combat magic, a discipline focused on dueling, versus enchantment magic, which uses mana on creatures and objects. The second match, healing magic, which creates miracles and supports teammates, versus ranged magic, which defeats opponents without letting them get close. The third match, structural magic, which combines different powers, versus summoning magic, which controls spirit beasts from other realms. Finally, the fourth match, unique magic versus alchemy magic, which has the ability to permanently alter compounds. The school-wide exhibition match is like a practice session for departments to learn from each other. We will hold it in 10 days. In the meantime, you may learn new magic or rest as you wish. I eagerly look forward to witnessing your fighting spirit." And at these encouraging words from the principal, the students below began to cheer loudly as if they had seen an idol. After giving his instructions to the students, the principal slowly departed. Setsuna realized this was his chance. This was the only place he could meet the principal. With that thought, he quickly pursued him. Once they were in the hallway and no one else was around, Setsuna called out, "Principal." The principal, surprised by this, turned his head and asked, "Are you the representative from the melee department?" "I am Setsuna Cromwell. I have a request. If I win, will you teach me your magic?" The principal, hearing this, looked puzzled and said, "Aren't you studying melee? I don't think summoning magic would be useful for you." "I mean your second magic," Setsuna said calmly. At Setsuna's words, the principal's eyes widened in surprise, but then immediately, a serious look appeared in his eyes as he spoke. "How do you know about that?" As he spoke, he began to release his formidable aura. Under the pressure he emitted, Setsuna felt as if he were caught in a torrent. What immense magical power! Clearly, the principal was wary of him. But this magic is the hope to stand against the evil deity. I cannot back down. With that thought, Setsuna steeled his resolve and spoke. "Though I cannot reveal the reason, the melee department's victory after 100 years will change the world. Don't you look forward to that?" Setsuna spoke while looking directly at him with unwavering determination in his eyes. And the boy's gaze caused the principal to fall silent for a moment. Then he spoke, "Are you plotting something? All right, if you win the championship, I will teach you magic." Hearing this, Setsuna let out a sigh of relief, then quickly bowed his head and said, "Thank you, principal. But this path won't be simple." The principal said, and despite these words, Setsuna firmly declared, "No matter what, I will definitely win the competition. That's the spirit." The principal said cheerfully, then turned and left. A long while later, Setsuna was sitting on a wooden bench, munching on bread. At the same time, he was lost in thought. My future 10 years from now depends on this. This bread is really good. I should thank Layla for telling me about it. Only 10 days left. I have to prepare with all my might. But just as he thought this, a voice suddenly boomed, "No need." And right after that, a giant fist came flying straight toward Setsuna. Setsuna, on his part, reacted quickly, immediately channeling his magic into both hands to defend against the fist. Next, Setsuna used the force of the punch to push himself backward, creating distance. Only then did he have time to look back and see what had just struck him. It turned out to be a golem. And the one who summoned this golem was none other than the bespectacled guy from earlier. At this moment, he seemed a little surprised to see Setsuna able to block the previous attack. "Oh, I was aiming for your blind spot to catch you off guard." Setsuna, on his side, began to look at the golem in front of him and ponder. A golem, he used a spell to infuse life into stone? Thinking this, he coldly asked, "What do you want?" Hearing Setsuna, the bespectacled guy gritted his teeth and said, "It's still about before. There's no need to wait for any friendly match. A novice like you dared to insult me like that." As he spoke, he swung his hand, scattering several stones onto the ground. And right after that, these stones seemed to multiply, becoming much more numerous. Setsuna, on the opposite side, began to gather magic into his fists and said, "That's just the consequence of your actions." And just as Setsuna was about to take on 4 stone golems by himself, the voices of a couple drifted from a distance. Seeing this, the bespectacled guy clicked his tongue in annoyance and said, "Getting reported for bullying someone from the close combat department would be a hassle." Having said that, he also dispelled his golem-controlling magic. Then left. At the same time, before leaving, he didn't forget to say, "When the real match comes, I'll be more prepared." Setsuna, on his part, silently watched him leave and thought, channeling magic and controlling it simultaneously, his talent is truly remarkable. But don't just leave after making someone drop their bread. What a waste. Setsuna thought, feeling a pang of regret for the bread he'd only taken one bite of. Time quickly passed until the next day. At this time, Master Lionel gathered everyone on the outdoor dirt field and said, "Today we will prepare for the friendly match. I will analyze the match between Drago and Setsuna from the other day. Do you guys know what you're lacking yet?" Lionel said, turning to look at Setsuna and Drago, and hearing this, both of them replied in unison, "Yes, sir." Hearing this, Lionel smiled and said, "Drago, you go first." "I still can't control my mana and emotions," Drago said awkwardly. "What about Setsuna?" Setsuna, after hearing, also said, "I still lack fundamental strength. I was overwhelmed by Drago's power, Master." After hearing the answers from both students, Lionel smiled and said, "Very good, knowing your weaknesses is the first step to improvement. Try to fix them in today's match." At this moment, Layla, who was behind, also wondered and spoke up, "Master, is today's match for practice for the friendly match?" "That's a great question. The opponent in the first match is Noel from the Divine Spell Magic Department. According to Setsuna, he uses many golems for defense and offense. Because golems have physical bodies, their basic fighting style is similar to close-quarters magic." Saying this, he turned to look at Drago and instructed, "Today I will give you a task. Drago, you focus on speed, creating golems and attacking from all directions. As for Setsuna, you will have to dodge Drago's attacks and counterattack." Just like that, the two began to get into their fighting stances. At this moment, Drago, full of fighting spirit, said, "Setsuna, this time won't be like the last." "I'm looking forward to it too," Setsuna said with a smile. And after the start signal sounded, the large-built Drago was the one who proactively charged forward to attack first. Immediately, he gathered power into his fist and struck straight toward Setsuna. And of course, with such an easy attack, Setsuna was able to recognize it and tilted his head to the side to dodge. He even quickly slipped to Drago's right, preparing to counterattack. But just as he was about to attack, Setsuna saw Drago's smug smile. It was then that he was startled to realize that the opening was intentionally created by this large young man. To trick him into this situation, and as a result, Setsuna took another left hook. Setsuna barely managed to react and defend himself. "Is my reaction speed too slow?" Setsuna thought to himself as he blocked Drago's painful punch. At this moment, Master Lionel, watching his two students sparring nearby, had to praise, "Well done, Drago, you've balanced both speed and power." It seemed that after hearing the praise from the muscular teacher, Drago felt empowered. He began using his signature left-right dodge technique in boxing to close in on Setsuna. He then threw another punch, but our protagonist, perhaps as nimble as a mouse, managed to dodge it once more. Drago wasn't surprised by this. He spun around and launched a hook punch, a left hook. Setsuna immediately recognized the move. But then, he glanced to the side and realized it was just a feint. The big guy's real attack was a straight punch with his right hand. Fortunately, Setsuna quickly realized this, or he would have taken the full impact. Meanwhile, Mr. Lionel continued to praise him. Excellent observation, Setsuna. Now, use your feet to dodge and then counterattack. Yes, sir. Setsuna quickly replied, then began using his agile footwork to evade Drago's relentless attacks. And as soon as he felt an opportunity, he put his strength into it and began to counterattack. Thus, the battle continued until both of them no longer had the strength to stand firm. Great fight, Setsuna, Drago gasped, panting heavily. As they were both gasping for air, Teacher Lionel brought them 2 bottles of water and said, both of your physical abilities are quite good. In the next few days, you'll need to handle 4 to 5 golems, alright? Setsuna, hearing this, replied, no matter how much we train, we mustn't become complacent. His words greatly pleased Teacher Lionel. The boy is very obedient. Drago knows basic close combat, but Setsuna's intuition is truly remarkable. Time quickly passed, and the day of the friendly match arrived. In a magnificent arena, the announcer's voice boomed, yes, the day has finally come. The 781st Elmerus Academy friendly match. Among the representatives of the 8 departments, who will be the strongest? At this moment, the 2 contestants participating in the first match, Setsuna and Noel, were already on the field. And taking advantage of this friendly match, some guy was holding a sign for betting. Hey, which side are you betting on to win? What kind of betting is this? Melee combat isn't that exciting. Someone shouted upon hearing about the betting. Up in the stands, the blonde guy who had previously bullied Layla was also participating in this game of chance. He gritted his teeth and cheered for Setsuna. Setsuna, go for it. I'm betting on you. Today's dark horse. As they were all chattering excitedly, a student suddenly noticed the head of the long-range magic department bringing his department's representative student to observe the battle, and said, hey, that's Acta from the long-range magic department. How can he be so relaxed before the match? If everything goes smoothly, he will likely face off against the winner of this match. Down on the competition ground, the announcer declared, the friendly match will feature a randomly changing arena floor each time. However, this time the battleground was a desert terrain. And as soon as Noel saw this arena appear, he was visibly delighted. Excellent. Even the other students in his department realized that he had a terrain advantage, so they cheered loudly, Noel, take down that brat. Your pathetic department is on the stage again. How amusing. At this moment, Drago, who was nearby, heard all these cheers and became enraged, saying, hey, that's enough talk. Look closely, are we truly nameless? She roared like a lioness, causing Professor Lionel nearby to quickly try and calm her. Turning back to the host, he finally announced, then, let the first match begin. Meanwhile, Noel on the opposite side, upon hearing the start signal, took out a black stone and asked Setsuna Cromwell, do you know what this is? Hearing this, Setsuna immediately replied, it's a dark iron stone. That's right. More precisely, it's a fragment needed to create a golem by combining it with sand. As he spoke, he dropped the stone onto the sandy ground below. Immediately after, he used his magic to affect the stone below. Then, a miraculous thing happened as a pile of rocks and sand mixed together began to emerge from the sandy ground. And finally, they began to connect, forming a colossal dark iron golem. After seeing this rock creature appear, he boldly declared, not even a sword can leave a scratch on this dark iron golem. But that wasn't all. At this moment, he began to pull out a whole bag of dark iron stone fragments. Then he scattered them all over the arena. And just like that, a dozen dark iron golems appeared on the arena, standing guard in front of Noel. At this point, even Layla, who had been calmly observing from the stands, began to worry for him. Just how many golems are there? She exclaimed in astonishment. Turning back to Noel, he now wore a triumphant smile and said, with this much sand, I can create countless golems. You won't be able to get close to me. Even the students from his own department believed victory was already assured. The outcome was decided before the match even began. Hey, melee fighter, you'd better surrender. Setsuna Cromwell, if you have anything to say, I'd be happy to listen. Noel stared intently at Setsuna and spoke. In response to his challenge, Setsuna said with a sigh, how utterly dull. I didn't expect this to be your trump card. Hearing Setsuna's contemptuous tone, Noel growled, what did you say? All right, my golems, destroy him. As he spoke, he began to command his army of stone golems to charge straight toward Setsuna. And before such a numerous army, Setsuna remained calm and didn't bother to dodge. Then, a huge explosion occurred, and dust and sand flew everywhere, obscuring visibility and leaving the audience above the arena unaware of the current situation. Meanwhile, Noel on this side began to laugh as if he had already won. Haha, do you understand my power now? And the onlookers above were still wondering, what's happening? So much dust, I can't see anything. Someone shouted. Turning to Setsuna. At this moment, he was still safe within the dust cloud, or rather, these golems were nothing in his eyes. For each of these hulking figures, he only needed one sword strike to shatter them into countless pieces. Then, Setsuna coldly walked towards Noel and said, I've understood everything about the dark iron ore. Noel, on the opposite side, after hearing him speak, gaped in disbelief. Those golems are especially sturdy. At this, he regained a bit of composure and created countless more golems. Ah, I told you, didn't I? I can create as many as I want. After saying that, he once again commanded these stone figures to charge towards Setsuna. But Setsuna still regarded these stone figures as nothing. In close combat, short-range magic is the strongest. No matter how many golems you create, if they only move in such a simple manner, I won't lose. As he spoke, Setsuna actively charged forward to send these golems back to the dust. And the result wasn't very surprising. For each of these stone figures, he only needed one sword strike to finish them. Just like that, in just a few seconds, all the stone figures Noel summoned were instantly eliminated. This sight made him flustered. Damn it, if that's the case, then the next golems. As he spoke, he began to pour out some dark iron ore to prepare to use magic. But before he could, Setsuna closed in on him as swiftly as the wind. This match truly was a bit unfair to him. Setsuna muttered, then punched him directly in the face, sending him flying several meters away. At this moment, the audience watching from the stands still didn't know what had happened. What's happening inside that dust cloud? I can't see anything. Someone shouted, and immediately after, the MC's announcement rang out, the dust cloud is slowly clearing. The one standing is, wait a moment, hold on, hey, the winner is Setsuna Cromwell. The MC began to shout as if his mic would shatter. At this moment, Setsuna confidently thought, I've won the first match. Layla, seeing Setsuna's victory, was also happy for him. He did it. Turning to the students of the Control Magic Department, they were wide-eyed and open-mouthed at Setsuna's victory. Hey, are you kidding me? The Melee Department won. How many years has it been since they last won? At this moment, a bespectacled student seemed to realize something and explained, wait, so that means if you keep creating golems, you can't sustain them for long? And it seemed everyone agreed with his explanation. What the heck? So Noel's plan backfired. Normally, he wouldn't have won. It turns out the Melee Department got lucky. It seemed these people comforted themselves by believing that Noel couldn't maintain too many golems, so all the stone figures collapsed on their own, allowing Setsuna to seize the opportunity and win. And while many were astonished by Setsuna's victory, the stout head of the long-range magic department clicked his tongue in annoyance and said, there's no way the plan backfired. Confound it, Setsuna Cromwell. At this moment, the grim-faced man next to him also spoke with interest. You've captured my attention, young man from the Melee Department. If that's the case, then I'll have to prepare some safeguards. Back on the arena, after Setsuna's first battle concluded, the organizers quickly started the second match. The thrilling competition continued, now with the second match. As for Setsuna, after his match, he went up to the stands to observe the next one. Layla, seeing him, smiled brightly and said, well done, Setsuna. Are you planning to watch the match? That's right. I might even glean some useful information, Setsuna said, beginning to sit down beside her. He then focused on the battle below. The two currently fighting belong to the Summoning Magic and Formation Magic departments. Meanwhile, the MC's voice continued to resonate, presenting to everyone, as of now, Karen, the representative of the Summoning Department, is dominating. The representative of the Formation Department is trying to close the gap. From everyone's perspective, Karen was currently riding a giant wolf, continuously controlling it to create ice shards that attacked the Magic Department representative. This Magic Department representative, in turn, continuously created formations to use as leverage and continuously moved closer to Karen. Turning to Setsuna, while observing the two of them compete, he also learned a bit. Although the representative of the Formation Department was being overwhelmed, his movements were quite impressive. I'm sure I could do something similar in close combat. And while he was thinking, Layla beside him also exclaimed, the movements of other magic systems look really cool. But I want to become stronger through melee magic. Setsuna, hearing this, was surprised and asked, now that I think about it, why did you choose melee magic? There are other magic systems, after all. Layla smiled and explained, it's like this, a long time ago, I was rescued by a melee mage. I was playing with my younger brother in the forest when we were attacked by a brown bear. At that moment, I thought all hope was lost. But suddenly, a melee mage rushed out and helped us. With just one strike, he was able to easily send the bear flying. After that, becoming a melee mage became my dream. I want to help those around me and become even stronger. At this, she felt a little embarrassed and said timidly, "It's really childish, isn't it? That's all there is to the reason." In response to Layla's words, Setsuna immediately encouraged her, "Not at all, I don't find it childish in the slightest. As long as you set a goal in your heart, you will surely become stronger." "I see, he," Layla said with a smile. But suddenly, the voice of his friend Leo rang out, "Hey, it's Setsuna. Long time no see." Hearing the familiar voice, Setsuna turned around and pondered. On second thought, after me, he's the second strongest person in the ranged combat department. Turning to Leo, the latter then spoke. "I watched your first match, you're really strong even using close-range magic." After saying that, he noticed Layla sitting next to Setsuna and spoke in a suggestive tone, "That girl sitting there, is she like this with you?" "Like this," Leo said, holding up a pinky finger in front of them. This made Layla blush intensely. "You're mistaken, I'm just Setsuna's friend. I'll leave you two to talk for a bit, okay?" After saying that, she left with a hint of irritation, while Setsuna had no idea what had gotten into her. What was that all about, he wondered. Putting Layla aside, Setsuna then turned to Leo and said, "By the way, I didn't expect you not to be the representative for the ranged combat department. If it were you, you could have defeated Acta." Hearing this, Leo's expression changed, and he said, "It might sound like I'm making excuses. But you should be careful of his underhanded tactics. Setsuna, I was tricked by Acta and lost the representative position to him." "I understand," Setsuna said calmly. At the same time, he thought, so he's the type of person who will use any means to achieve victory. I can't let my guard down. The scene shifts to grim-faced Acta, who seemed to have begun executing some sort of plot. As the cunning fellow opened a chest full of herbs and smiled with an extremely sinister grin. Not long after, when the other matches had concluded, it was Setsuna's turn to compete once more. Up next is the first match of round 2, Ranged Combat Department versus Close Combat Department. The chosen arena was the scorching hell. Just falling down would lead to immediate destruction. And after seeing this arena, Lionel and Drago muttered, "If it's this arena, it'll be very difficult to approach the opponent. It's an arena that gives the enemy an advantage." And of course, this was no coincidence. The sudden appearance of such a disadvantageous arena for Setsuna was all caused by the portly head of the Ranged Combat Department. Even the cunning Acta had to praise his methods, as expected of the professor and head of the Ranged Combat Department. "Cheating like this is as easy as flipping a hand for you." Hearing him say that, the portly man angrily replied, "I must teach that boy a proper lesson. I will make him regret choosing the close combat course." Turning to Setsuna, he and Layla were in the waiting room. And just as Layla was about to touch a vase on the table, Setsuna immediately stopped her and said, "Layla, don't touch that vase. It's a magic tool. Just touching it will activate it instantly. It will definitely drain all your mana." Hearing this, Layla quickly dodged to the side. And from her perspective, the vase was emitting a purple energy that looked quite unsafe. Then she also said in surprise to Setsuna, "Why would you leave something like this here? It's a trap aimed at me. This is the 7th time already," Setsuna said calmly. But these words made Layla even more worried. 7 times? Are you alright? Hearing this, Setsuna turned and said, "I've avoided touching them, so there's no problem." After saying this, he also guessed who the mastermind behind this was. The culprit is definitely Acta. He's very cunning. There's not a single trace of him. And just as Setsuna thought of this, a sudden knock echoed from outside. Setsuna opened the door, and when he did, there were 3 children outside, holding a bouquet of flowers and smiling as they said to him, "Big brother, this is for you." Hearing this, Layla also smiled and said, "What's going on, kids? Someone over there told us to give this to you, big brother." The gray-haired child said, then pointed to one side of the hallway. But from Setsuna's perspective, there was no one there at all. Seeing this, Layla also became curious and said, "Is it a fan of Setsuna? Although that person could have given the flowers themselves. He said he was too shy." The gray-haired boy said awkwardly. And at the same time, the blonde girl in the group coughed a few tired coughs. Even the bouquet in her hand could no longer be held. "I feel a little dizzy," the girl said weakly. And from Setsuna's perspective, at this moment, a purple bruise had appeared on the girl's neck. And as soon as he saw this mark, his face turned grim. Before the regression, I had seen such sights on the battlefield several times. Thinking of this, he quickly kicked the bouquet away. And at this moment, the boy in the group of 3 also began to feel unwell. Layla, still not understanding what was happening, immediately asked, "What's going on?" Setsuna, hearing this, seriously explained. "It's a type of poisonous herb called venenum." But before he could finish speaking, all 3 children collapsed to the ground. This sight made Setsuna start to become enraged. "Involving children too? So you intended to go this far? If we don't treat them quickly, there will be irreversible consequences. But finding a healer who can handle this type of poison now won't be easy." Setsuna gritted his teeth in thought. And at this moment, Layla beside him also spoke up, asking, "The children are in a critical condition, aren't they?" "That's right. Layla, you should get away from here. Just being close could lead to you being affected by the toxin," Setsuna said worriedly. But Layla, on her part, began to think of something. Then, a look of determination appeared in her eyes. Saying, "It's all right, leave the children to me." As she spoke, she took out the hair ornament her mother had given her. Setsuna, on his side, also realized her intention. It was that ornament from that time. A magical tool used to store mana. "Setsuna, at this moment," Layla also spoke, "the healing magic mother cast upon this tool for me." Simultaneously, Layla activated the magic already imbued in the tool. Immediately after, a glow began to emanate from Layla's position, enveloping all 3 children. At this moment, the dark blemishes on the children's bodies slowly began to fade. Seeing this, Setsuna felt less worried. The dark spots are fading. He thought to himself. Although mother gave it to me as a gift to use in times of crisis, I should definitely use it now, shouldn't I? Layla said. Layla spoke. Hearing her, Setsuna smiled. "Thank you very much." After speaking, he quickly enveloped his entire body in magic power. Then, carrying the bouquet, he ran off to find a place to dispose of it. "Leave that toxic plant to me," Setsuna said. Next, he recalled the characteristics of this flower. The venenum grass is most potent when it blooms. Before that happens, I must destroy it. But if I do that in a crowded place, the toxin will spread outwards. And as Setsuna thought this, the flowers began to release their potent toxin. Even though his body was enveloped in magic power, Setsuna still began to show signs of being affected by the toxin. Fortunately, very soon after, he managed to reach his secret training ground. "If I want to destroy it, I must come to this place." And at this very moment, the bouquet in Setsuna's hand reached its fullest bloom. Streams of poisonous fumes began to rise visibly from the flowers. Seeing this, Setsuna, without hesitation, immediately threw the poisonous bouquet upwards. Then, he created a mana sword and cut it to pieces. Shattered this bouquet into countless pieces. And immediately after that, the divine tree emitted its sacred mana to heal and purify Setsuna. Back at the arena, everyone was waiting for Setsuna, practically craning their necks. "Hey, has the representative from the melee department still not arrived?" said a black-haired person. The blonde man next to him scoffed, he probably ran away. Even the MC, after a long wait, grew bored and began to announce, "As the allotted time has passed, contestant Setsuna will forfeit, and contestant Acta will be declared the winner." But before he could finish, Setsuna's voice echoed throughout the arena, "Wait!" As this sound resonated, everyone in the arena turned their attention to Setsuna. And it seemed that even after being purified by the divine tree, a trace of the poison still lingered in his body. But Setsuna wasn't paying much attention to this trivial poison right now. His heart was currently filled with fury as he roared at Acta in front of him, "I won't give up, fight me, Acta." Acta, on the opposite side, seeing Setsuna's condition, began to laugh with a truly provoking grin. "In that state, you can barely stand, yet you dare to speak so boldly." Then, the man with the grim expression continued to provoke, "It seems you've received my congratulatory gift, haven't you?" At his mocking words, Setsuna grew even more enraged and said, "What have you done? So many innocent people have been harmed by that deadly poison." Acta, on his side, remained completely unfazed. As soon as he heard Setsuna's question, he feigned ignorance and said, "Oh, what poison? There's no such thing." Setsuna, seeing him lie so brazenly, unconsciously clenched his fists in fury, to the point where the veins on the back of his hands became clearly visible. And this only made Acta more smug. "You're easily angered, Setsuna Cromwell. We think you should be happy to serve us nobles." Hearing him say this, Setsuna couldn't hold back and roared, "Acta." Meanwhile, on the side, the host realized that these two contestants were truly eager for a fight, so he immediately announced, "Then, round 2 officially begins." And as soon as the words were uttered, Acta immediately formed a magic circle in his palm. This was his storm magic. Immediately after, he unleashed this magic toward Setsuna, forcing him to struggle to dodge. Meanwhile, the burly Drago also noticed Setsuna's unusual condition. Hey, what's wrong with him? His mana isn't complete. Turned towards Setsuna. Because moving his body with such high intensity also caused his body to tremble with pain. With the sacred protective plant, the Venenum grass's poison had been purified. But there wasn't enough time to detoxify his body from within. Setsuna thought to himself. But before he could think for long, Acta on the opposite side unleashed a barrage of spells towards him. Having no other choice, Setsuna once again had to increase his speed to evade these magical attacks. Meanwhile, Acta, seeing Setsuna scurrying like a mouse, became even more invigorated. It's not over yet. As he spoke, he continuously cast spells targeting Setsuna, while Setsuna had to constantly move between the rock formations to evade. Oh, the representative of the melee department can only defend. The MC's voice rang out upon seeing Setsuna only evading. And the portly head of the ranged magic department, seeing this scene, laughed triumphantly. Heh, it seems this preparation was well worth it. Setsuna Cromwell, you'd better prepare yourself. Turning back to Setsuna, at this moment, he looked up towards the stands and thought, Layla still hasn't returned, I hope they're safe. This action of his was noticed by Acta. So, as he unleashed magic, he said, Heh, worried about something? Setsuna didn't bother to reply to him, and it seemed Setsuna's physical condition was deteriorating quite seriously. Setsuna's performance also caused some onlookers to scoff. The representative of the melee department only knows how to run away. They must be helpless against ranged opponents. At this moment, down below, Acta began to shake Setsuna's resolve. It's come to this, why don't you just surrender? He said, unleashing two magical attacks towards Setsuna. Setsuna immediately raised both hands to defend. I'll defend with a mana shield, he thought to himself. But at the very moment this spell was about to strike Setsuna, the layer of mana he had concentrated on his hands for defense suddenly vanished. As a result, Setsuna took the full force of this direct magical attack without any magic to defend himself. And once the explosion dissipated, Setsuna's body, covered in wounds, appeared before their eyes. And sure enough, Acta, after seeing this scene, burst out laughing. Haha, you're exhausted. Before his triumphant demeanor, Setsuna only coldly asked. Why don't you just finish me off? The smartest move is to avoid close combat and then stun me with continuous attacks. But all this time, you've only been provoking me. What are you planning? The man with the deathly face heard this and began to laugh sinisterly, saying, I didn't expect you to teach me long-range combat tactics. But your observation isn't bad. You certainly can't be underestimated. Look around. According to his words, at this moment, all four sides around Setsuna were lava. And the only standing position was the rock outcrop Setsuna was on, but if the one above used magic to shatter Setsuna's rock pillar, he could fall into the lava and perish instantly. Even this blonde young man noticed the abnormality and immediately shouted. That guy, what exactly is he planning? Turning to Acta, he also muttered his thoughts for Setsuna to hear. I followed the rules to avoid unnecessary risks, this was my intention from the start. At this, he also began to shout, Storm Cannon. And as he spoke, his entire body was enveloped in an incredibly powerful current of wind. This strike will end everything, he declared coldly. But at this very moment, Layla appeared in the stands and shouted. Setsuna, the children are safe, she said, holding up her brooch for Setsuna to see. Seeing this, Setsuna also smiled and let out a sigh of relief. Phew, I don't have to worry about them anymore, I can get back to it now. As he said this, Setsuna's body was suddenly enveloped in a surge of blue magical power. And then, the wounds on his body slowly began to heal. And this was the first time Acta's expression changed. How are you recovering? He stammered. And to this question, Setsuna calmly replied, what's so surprising? I'm just using physical enhancement. I activated all my cells during the fight. I also separated the poison. While you were busy weakening my footwork, you fell for it. You coward, Setsuna said, beginning to conjure a mana sword. Acta, on the opposite side, also began to feel flustered. Don't get arrogant. What else can you even do now? That's right, go for it, Acta. The fat man roared. And immediately after, his storm magic aimed directly at Setsuna. And when faced with this colossal magic, Setsuna remained calm enough to devise a counter-strategy. No footwork, and my remaining magical power is almost depleted, but this much is enough to defeat you. Setsuna said this while powerfully swinging the sword in his hand, striking directly at the magic. Then, he also put all his strength into his arms and sent the magic flying back towards Acta. This incredible sight made his friend Drago exclaim in surprise. He pushed it back. Turning to Acta, after seeing his magic sent flying back towards him, he let out a roar and gathered magical power in his palms. And just before the magic struck him, he managed to unleash his own magical power to neutralize it. Did you think I couldn't nullify my own magic? Your strategy is useless. It's all over, Acta said, pleased. But before he could enjoy his triumph for even 3 seconds, Setsuna lunged forward, right in front of him. Then he spoke coldly. Same goes for you. Did you think I couldn't close this distance? Acta, now trembling all over, was speechless. No, it can't be. And as soon as he finished speaking, Setsuna delivered several sword strikes to him, leaving him lying there, eyes wide and vacant. If you want forgiveness, apologize to those children, Setsuna said coldly. At that moment, the announcer's voice quickly boomed, the winner is Setsuna Cromwell. After witnessing Setsuna's victory, Lionel and Drago both beamed with joy. That's more like it, Drago exclaimed. But at that very moment, Drago's eyes widened because, following his gaze, the rock ledge where Setsuna stood suddenly cracked. The spectators, seeing this, cried out in alarm, wait, they're falling. Immediately after they spoke, the entire rock ledge collapsed, pulling both Setsuna and Acta down as they began to fall. Turning to Setsuna, despite being about to fall into a lava stream, he remained calm enough to think, Acta is unconscious. This won't do, will it? Thinking this, he quickly grabbed Acta's leg to pull him up. But unfortunately, it was Setsuna himself who was pulled down. Darn it, it's come to this, Setsuna thought to himself. Then, at the very moment they were about to plunge into the lava stream, a voice suddenly rang out, Fenrir. As this voice rang out, a giant wolf suddenly charged straight in and protected them. Seeing this, Setsuna sighed in relief and thought, this is Karen's summoning spell. And this timely rescue caused the audience to erupt in cheers. Next, Setsuna was attended to by the medical staff. Meanwhile, Acta was placed on a stretcher and carried away, while Karen happily stroked her summoned beast and said, there, good boy. Then she looked at Setsuna and said, at least one person is still conscious. It seems you'd be fine even without my help, wouldn't you? Setsuna smiled and said, no way, you really saved me. After speaking, he gazed at the beautiful girl and thought, Karen of the summoning department. She is a formidable opponent in this championship tournament, both talented and stylish. If Karen continues to win, I'll have to prepare myself for an intense match. Turning to the stands, students from other departments now started to see the close combat department differently. Hey, the close combat department's representative won again. This can't be just luck, can it? At this rate, it's getting harder and harder to predict. And as everyone was gradually acknowledging the strength of the close combat department, the stout head of the long-range magic department flew into a rage. Blast it, they're utterly useless. I won't forget this, Setsuna Cromwell, he said, making a rude gesture toward Setsuna, even though Setsuna couldn't see him. As soon as Setsuna finished getting bandaged, he ran over to Layla's group. Well done, Setsuna, Layla said. I heard Layla. You've been through a lot, Drago said. Hearing them, Setsuna asked, how are the children? They're sleeping in the infirmary. The doctor said they'll recover quickly, Layla said with a smile. That's a relief then. Setsuna smiled upon hearing this information. But suddenly at this moment, Setsuna sensed something that made his face darken. And immediately, Setsuna turned around to observe. This made Layla, who was beside him, ask, puzzled, is something wrong? It's nothing, Setsuna said quickly. But in reality, he was breaking out in a cold sweat. What was that just now? It was so chilling. Dark magic filled with malevolent intent. What's going on at this tournament? Time quickly passed. At this moment, Setsuna was training alone. But it seemed he wasn't quite satisfied with his current strength. The final match will take place next week. And that mysterious individual. I need power to stand against them. The power I'm searching for. And just as he arrived, the voice of the burly Master Lionel echoed from behind, Hey Setsuna, why did you call me here? Hearing his voice, Setsuna calmly turned around and said, I'd like to ask for your guidance once more, Professor. Ah no, I should call you the Comet Punch Lionel, shouldn't I? Lionel, hearing this, was a little surprised and then chuckled. That name brings back memories. Where did you hear it? Setsuna, hearing his admission, clenched his fists in excitement. Then he thought, so it really is you, Professor. Comet Punch was a nickname I heard the Magic Legion mention before my regression. It's rumored that he's a close combat mage, capable of defeating fierce dragons with just one strike. When I joined, he had already retired, so I never had the chance to fight alongside him. I had a hunch ever since we met, but I never thought it would actually be true. Thinking this, Setsuna immediately bowed and said, "Please, teach me your magic." Hearing him, Lionel scratched his head and said, "It's been a long time since I've been called the Comet Punch." "It's nothing. Among all the close combat practitioners I've met, you are the strongest, Professor," Setsuna calmly stated. Turning back to Setsuna, Lionel took a deep breath and asked, "Why do you seek that power? You're already strong enough, aren't you?" Setsuna listened, then replied, "It's still not enough. I don't want to lose to anyone. Not even if my opponent is a god." At his words, the formidable Lionel burst out laughing. "Haha, you're truly interesting, Setsuna. In that case, normally I wouldn't teach this technique to students who are still growing, but I'll make an exception for you." With that, he began to gather magical power into his fist. Then began to explain, "This magic is what earned me the name Comet Punch. This move consumes a lot of mana, so I can't use it many times. Just once. Watch carefully." Having said that, he punched forcefully forward, creating a terrifying surge of energy that devastated everything in its path. Rocks and debris scattered wildly around, forcing Setsuna to quickly raise his hands to shield himself and wait for the explosion to subside. What appeared before Setsuna's eyes was a deeply gouged trench in the earth. "What kind of power is this?" Setsuna exclaimed in surprise. At this moment, Lionel continued to explain, "This technique requires me to continuously accumulate mana for a while before unleashing the attack. So it's not suitable for 1v1 matches like the championship tournament. Are you alright?" "Yes, I trust you, Professor Lionel," Setsuna quickly replied. Hearing him say that, Lionel immediately got down to business. "Alright then, let's start training right away. Follow me, Setsuna." The scene shifts to Karen. She was happily drinking tea and chatting with someone. "First, congratulations on reaching the finals," someone opposite Karen spoke up. Hearing this, Karen smiled brightly and said, "Hee hee, thank you very much." Then, the mysterious person asked, "Your upcoming opponent is from the melee department. How confident are you?" Karen listened and still smiled, saying, "Winning or losing depends on luck. I'll do my best to perform well." "Would you like another cup?" "Thank you," the other person said. And not long after that, as Karen carried the drink tray away, the mysterious person slowly pulled out a card from their pants pocket. Then aimed it towards the back of Karen's neck. And at that very moment, a certain symbol suddenly appeared on the back of her neck. Karen immediately fainted. And after seeing her collapse, the mysterious person coldly mused, "If she wins, it will also win. The situation has changed, so." Time quickly passed. At this point, Setsuna continued practicing the technique Lionel had taught him. With just a single punch, he could now create a large explosion in the forest. "Professor, what do you think?" Setsuna asked. Lionel's eyes widened in astonishment at Setsuna's learning ability. He couldn't believe that in less than a week, the boy had memorized everything. "It took me 2 years to learn that," Lionel thought to himself. And then he praised without reservation, "Excellent. I taught you the stellar punch. No, a bombardment is more accurate." Setsuna, on his side, also smiled confidently. And so, the time for the final match had arrived. The 781st Elmeric Academy of Magic Friendly Tournament's final match had finally begun. The crowd favorite with overwhelming power, Karen from the Summoning Department, will face off against the Rising Star, Setsuna from the Melee Department. The arena for the final match was none other than the ruins of the goddess. To prevent damage from this fierce battle, a super strong shield would be set up by the formation mages. Meanwhile, students from other departments in the stands above were discussing, "Hey, who do you guys think will win?" The chubby guy next to him heard that and confidently said, "It's definitely the undefeated Summoning Department." But the girl with purple hair didn't think so. "The Melee Department is also very strong. I've become his fan." Such discussions kept echoing. Even the 3 kids from last time were present today to cheer for Setsuna. "Go, Setsuna." Turning to Layla, after seeing this arena, she happily said, "Finally, a match where he's not at a disadvantage." "I hope so," Lionel calmly replied. And while these two were still chatting, Setsuna below also glanced towards the headmaster and thought, "If I win, you have to keep your promise, headmaster, and teach me the second magic." Meanwhile, on the opposite side, Karen also spoke up, "Your spirits seem high, don't they?" "Let's both do our best, Setsuna," she said, while summoning her wolf. And right after that, the announcer, seeing that they were ready, immediately declared, "The final match we've been waiting for officially begins." And right after the announcer's words, Karen immediately shouted, "Come forth, Fenrir." At her words, the mini-wolf suddenly transformed into a giant wolf. Next, it glanced towards Setsuna with dangerous eyes. And right after that, it immediately aimed straight at Setsuna and unleashed an ice breath attack. Fortunately, Setsuna realized in time and immediately jumped to the side to dodge. But even so, he still felt this blow was a bit formidable. Does this freezing attack have the same properties as a blizzard, he wondered. Karen, seeing Setsuna evade so quickly, didn't hesitate to praise him. Your footwork is indeed excellent. But I won't give you a chance to rest. As she spoke, she commanded Fenrir to create 4 streams of light that flew directly toward Setsuna. Setsuna, on the opposite side, saw this and immediately used enhancement magic on himself to increase his movement speed. Then, like an eel, he began to weave and dodge between these attacks. Next, Setsuna swiftly sliced through a stream of frost and charged straight towards Karen. Immediately after, he quickly used the sword in his hand to blind one of Fenrir's eyes. Layla, in the stands, saw this and cheered joyfully. He did it. But before she could rejoice for long, Lionel beside her reminded, no, summoned spirit beasts accumulate a lot of mana. A wound like that will heal right away. Just as he said, Karen immediately began to use her magic to heal Fenrir. All right, it's nothing. Fenrir, you are very strong, she said, commanding Fenrir to charge forward, forcing Setsuna to quickly retreat to maintain distance. You did well, so. At this point, Karen used some kind of magic that caused a cold mist to appear across the entire arena. Soon after, the entire arena floor was completely frozen, which certainly limited Setsuna's movement. Is this a frozen arena? I understand. The frozen mana was retained thanks to the shield, Setsuna thought after seeing this scene. At the same time, somewhere else in the arena, the mysterious individual was also observing their battle and muttering, on a frozen arena. Fenrir's attack power will be even stronger. What will you do, Setsuna? Turning back to Setsuna, he was currently thinking of a way to respond. Beyond attack range, a prolonged battle will definitely be disadvantageous for me. If so, I'll decide the outcome with a cannon strike. Thinking this, Setsuna began to rush forward and close in on Fenrir, while trying to avoid the wolf's icy breath. However, in everyone's eyes, Setsuna didn't seem to be having much success. Because every time he got close, Fenrir would use its icy breath to push him back. Students from other departments saw this and began to discuss. The representative of the melee department is on the defensive. It's true that they can't defeat a summoner. Even the younger students were worried for Setsuna at this moment. But only Lionel noticed something and was stunned. This made Layla beside him a bit curious, and she asked, Professor, what's wrong? Ah, it's nothing, Lionel said with a smile. Then, he turned to look at Setsuna and thought, to use a cannon strike, he needs time to cast it. This move cannot be used in a one-on-one fight. But with his superior mana control, it's highly likely he'll use an artillery strike in battle. This won't be easy. Back in the battle, Karen realized Setsuna had a plan. What was he plotting? I won't give him a chance. Karen thought to herself, then shouted. Come forth, Garuda. Immediately after saying this, Karen used summoning magic and called forth an eagle spirit beast. This also made Drago, who was observing, exclaim in astonishment. She summoned a second one? Even a teacher like Lionel broke into a sweat because of Karen's abilities. Consecutive summons? The girl truly is talented. And because Karen had summoned another beast, Setsuna's situation became even more difficult. Immediately, both beasts attacked Setsuna simultaneously, giving him no time to dodge. Following that, a large explosion occurred from the beast's assault. Even the ice surface shattered into countless fragments. Layla, from the stands above, saw this and shouted out in worry. Setsuna! Down below, as the dust gradually cleared, everyone could see Setsuna's form. It seemed he had somehow managed to block the 2 summoned beasts' attacks. He even landed an elbow and a punch on each of them, causing both to be sent flying. You truly are a genius mage. That's why I guessed you still had a trump card. Setsuna said calmly. And this made Karen begin to turn pale. From her perspective, Setsuna began to gather mana into his fist and muttered. Now it's my turn. But at that very moment, the mysterious figure observing from afar also spoke, everything ends here. After speaking, he waved his hand to use some kind of magic, and immediately after his fingers snapped. A strange phenomenon occurred, as the mark on Karen's nape suddenly erupted with a surge of power. This powerful and uncontrollable foreign energy made her scream in agony. Seeing her suddenly crying out so desperately, Setsuna immediately stopped his artillery strike and asked worriedly, Karen, are you all right? Then, he sensed the energy emanating from Karen and broke into a sweat. Could this magic be his? According to Setsuna's senses, this energy wave belonged to an enemy he was very familiar with. The wicked magic gives me the exact same feeling as the magic emanating from an evil god. What in the world is happening? Setsuna gritted his teeth in thought. Meanwhile, on the opposite side, Karen's face suddenly contorted in pain. Immediately after, she raised her hand to the sky and performed a summoning spell. Just like that, 4 more summoned beasts were called forth by Karen. It seemed she was temporarily being forcibly manipulated by the mysterious individual. Meanwhile, the spectators watching didn't understand what was happening, and seeing her summon so many creatures, they began cheering wildly. Wow, how many summons has she called forth? Lionel also started getting a headache from this situation. This magic is clearly not emanating from Karen. Stop this match immediately and dispel the magic shield. What is the shield mage doing at a time like this? He roared in anger. But unfortunately, the mysterious individual had calculated everything without missing a beat. Only the one who created the shield can dispel it. They must be looking for you now. Isn't that right, Mr. Shield Mage? He said, turning to look at a man with a vacant expression. It seemed he had also temporarily lost his awareness, and control over this shield also appeared to have been seized by this mysterious individual. Turning back to Setsuna, he was struggling to fend off attacks from the summoned creatures Karen had just called forth. Just now, he was hastily dodging a powerful attack from the multi-headed giant. A single blow from it caused the ice floor to crack into countless pieces. Not only that, Setsuna also constantly had to watch out for aerial attacks from the eagle spirit beast, or the 2-headed wolf always ready to strike him when he was vulnerable. And one of the best solutions is to deal with the one controlling Karen. The source of this magic must be somewhere nearby. I need to follow the flow of magic. Setsuna gritted his teeth in thought, simultaneously turning his head to search his surroundings. But it could only be said that the mysterious individual had already anticipated his thoughts. He immediately guessed Setsuna's intentions. At a time like this, you still have time to look around? He said, beginning to use his magic. To control the eagle spirit beast to charge and attack Setsuna. As a result, he was grabbed by its 2 talons and slammed straight into a pillar behind him. The impact was so strong that the pillar shattered immediately afterward. And at the spots where the talons dug in, streaks of blood appeared. Finally, Setsuna was also sent flying by the force of this push. Layla in the stands turned pale with worry, seeing him suffering such a harsh blow. Setsuna. Turning back to Setsuna, it must be said that he was in a rather dire state now. It was uncertain how much longer he could hold out. And after seeing Setsuna in this condition, the mysterious individual smirked triumphantly. Locating the source of this mana while simultaneously fighting several summoned beasts is beyond your capabilities. With just those 2 arms, you'll eventually meet your end. And I'm not the only one who realizes this. Master Lionel also sees how dire the situation is. This isn't good. Setsuna doesn't have time to use his bombardment spell. Furthermore, Karen has reached her limit. If no one stops that mana, she won't be able to control it and will perish. From his perspective, Karen was trembling with pain, but then she struggled to tell Setsuna, who was ahead, run. Meanwhile, Setsuna was kicking the 2-headed dog twice in the face. Hearing that, he also thought, just as I suspected, someone is controlling him. And while he was still thinking, tears streamed down Karen's beautiful face. At this moment, she began to look at Setsuna with pleading eyes and said, before they take your life, please run, Setsuna. As she spoke these words, it seemed the mysterious individual also controlled her body and commanded all the summoned creatures to charge and attack simultaneously. Seeing this, Setsuna showed no fear. He even used enhancement magic to actively charge forward, dodging the attacks of the first 2 summoned creatures, the dog and the giant. Next, he charged straight towards the most vulnerable summoned creature, the small rabbit, and delivered a powerful punch to its body, causing it to sink into the ground. But seizing this opportunity, the ox beside him charged towards him like a tank. Seeing this, Setsuna knew he had no time to dodge. So he immediately adopted his most stable stance, simultaneously enveloping his entire body in mana, and just as the ox charged, he used both hands to firmly grip its horns. Next, Setsuna gritted his teeth, channeled all his strength into his arms, and lifted the ox high. At the same time, the remaining summoned creatures were also charging towards him. Seeing this, Setsuna let out a loud shout. Then he hurled the ox straight towards the 3 summoned beasts that were charging at him. And while he was fighting for his life, the principal merely watched with concern, doing absolutely nothing. Fortunately, Setsuna still had the reliable Master Lionel. At this moment, he was frantically searching for the mage who created the shield. As he went, he thought, by now, Setsuna must have expended half his mana. This situation is truly extremely dire. I must find the mage who created that magic shield as soon as possible. Don't you dare perish, Setsuna. Looking down, after temporarily repelling this wave of attacks from the summoned beasts, Setsuna finally had a moment to catch his breath. But before Setsuna could take more than a few breaths, the rabbit he thought had been defeated suddenly reappeared behind him, and before Setsuna could react, it pierced his thigh with the sharp horn on its forehead. Seeing this, Layla's face turned pale. His leg, Layla said worriedly. By this point, even students from other departments realized something was amiss. Oh, do you think he's gone a bit too far? They said worriedly. Upon seeing this, the mysterious figure laughed excitedly. Now you can't use your magic anymore. Finish it off, my pet. With that, he waved his hand to command. As all the summoned beasts charged forward to attack. Setsuna's current situation was dire, as he was surrounded by the summoned beasts from all sides, and one of Setsuna's legs was incapacitated. And because one leg was temporarily unusable, Setsuna couldn't evade Fenrir's attack. Immediately, it bit down on Setsuna's left arm, causing his arm to gush with blood. Even after biting down, it gnashed its teeth harder, as if wanting to crush his arm completely. And this terrible pain made Setsuna unable to hold back a desperate scream. And in his daze, he recalled some words from his teacher, Lionel. Do you know what the most important thing for you, as close combat mages, to do in a fight is? Hearing this, Drago immediately said, it's to defeat the enemy with a powerful blow. Setsuna, however, had a different thought and said, it's to minimize the damage taken while closing the distance with the enemy as much as possible, isn't it? That's also correct, but there's something else even more important. It's to deliver a truly powerful punch to the opponent with the spirit of enduring blows to counterattack. And that's why you all will have to undergo endurance training. Back to reality, it seemed thanks to the endurance exercises, Setsuna had finally regained his composure and was gradually able to withstand the pain. I finally did it, Setsuna mumbled. And at the same time, his right fist was now fully charged with mana. This is the moment for him to unleash his bombardment technique, with the wolf entangled by his arm. And this made the mysterious figure's eyes widen in surprise. No way, he shouldn't be able to use that arm anymore. Don't tell me he did that on purpose to hide the fact that he's been accumulating mana this whole time. At this moment, he also thought to himself, these summoned beasts are out of control. If I expose a small opening like this to them, I can gather all of them in one place, then deal with them in a single strike. I'll put all my remaining mana into this punch and take down all of you. And then, under the anxious gaze of everyone, Setsuna unleashed his bombardment technique directly at the wolf, causing it to. It was instantly eliminated, and Karen herself was thrown clear. But that wasn't all. The pillar of light energy from this attack pierced through Fenrir's body and obliterated everything in its path, including the summoned beasts behind it.